Hi, everyone. Welcome to our live 10 questions with series during which we sit down with entrepreneurs and business leaders to hear all about their journeys and the lessons along the way, because what is the point of learning lessons if you don't get to share that with the rest of the world? And today I am so excited to bring on the founders of Beekman 1802, Josh Kilmer-Purcell and Brent Ridge. Now, Beekman 1802 was founded during, it's the world's biggest goat milk skincare company, which we're going to get into. But it started with humble beginnings out of necessity during the 2008 recession. We'll hear all about that and how that set the foundation for the business, and Josh and Brent's advice for founders that are coming out of this new era of innovation amid COVID-19. We'll also discuss the company's massive growth over the years through television opportunities and partnerships with major retailers, how they sustain such scale, and the systems that have enabled them to continue to grow. We'll also find out the secret ingredient beyond the goat's milk, even though they are the world's biggest goat milk skincare company. Again, can't wait to learn more about that. But what is the secret ingredient that got them a cult following? We'll be diving into all of that. But first, as always, a reminder for all of you that are tuning in. First, if you have any questions for Brent and Josh, make sure you leave those in the comments section. We'll get to as many as we possibly can. And we also want to make sure you all shout out to us. Tell us where you're tuning in from. Give us a ciao, an hola, a ni hao, a konnichiwa word, whatever it is. Tell us where you're tuning in from. Drop a hello, and we'll get right back to you. Now, without further ado, please join me in welcoming the co-founders of Beekman 1802, Brent Ridge and Josh Kilmer-Purcell. Hi, Josh. Hi, Brent. How are you?
Hi, Kendall. Hi, everybody.
Thanks for having us.
Are you kidding? Thanks for joining us. I'm super excited to get into this. And while I did provide a teeny tiny bit of insight into Beekman 1802, can you guys give us your own elevator pitch?
Sure. Well, Beekman 1802 is the largest independently owned skincare company in the United States. And we formulate products for everybody, but especially for people with sensitive skin issues. And we say that our two key ingredients are goat milk and kindness.
Oh, I love that. Well, just so you know, that wasn't part of our 10 questions. We still have 10 to go. So if you guys are ready, I'm going to put you in the hot seat so we can dive in to all of that and get to know Beekman 1802 a little bit more. Are you ready?
Yep.
All right, starting with question number 1. What's the genesis story of Beekman 1802, and how did that lay the foundation of the business?
We have the best founding story of any company anywhere. I swear by this. But as Brent said, one of our key ingredients is kindness, and that actually was it was an act of kindness that launched our company. And we were two New York City guys. He was a physician, I was a writer, and we were traveling in upstate New York 12 years ago, and we found a farm, and we bought this farm as a weekend place. We got a letter in our mailbox from a man named Farmer John, a local guy who was losing his farm. He had 80 goats that he needed a home, and we took him in. And when we lost our jobs in the recession, it was really him and the goats that we turned into our company. So it was that initial act of kindness that, founded the roots of our company and is what propelled us forward today.
Truly. I mean, that is such an incredible story. And what's interesting is, just like the recession, COVID-19 has actually sparked a new way of innovation, really out of necessity, kind of like what you're talking about here. What do you think sets businesses apart that are founded out of that necessity? And what advice can you share with the founders that are coming out of this current era of innovation right now?
Well, I think you have to be able to pivot, and you have to be able to think on your feet. And I think that's more important now than ever. Things change so quickly these days, regardless of COVID or not. But I think being nimble and be able to pivot and be able to think ahead of time, 2 steps ahead. I think the most important thing, particularly if you're working in a CPG brand or some sort of consumer product category, that storytelling is of utmost importance, because now not only is the audience very fragmented and audiences are forming more and more niche audiences. The importance of storytelling and how you're going to tell those stories, not to a mass audience, but to an aggregate of very small audiences. So how do you adapt your story and pivot your story to tell to each particular audience?
I love that. I mean, as a storyteller myself, essentially, that is so important. I love that you pointed that out. And what you were saying about change, I just had an interview for an upcoming podcast for the Netsuite podcast, and she said, I mean, everything is changing. The pace of change is changing, and so critical. Stay on your toes and be ready for anything. Okay, question number 3. As first-time entrepreneurs, how did you get Beekman 1802 off the ground? Who was part of that, and how did that shape your business model?
Well, we really started the business the old-fashioned way. We actually just launched it ourselves with our own money, with our own investment. We had no private equity or venture capitals. I think a lot of people really equate entrepreneurialism right now with having to go out and get investment. And we did it the old-fashioned way. We're like, you can't invest a nickel until you've earned a dime. We sold a bar of soap, and we would take the profit and invest it in the next bar of soap. And I think that's important. That's not to say, venture capital, private equity is bad, but if you're going to start a company, start the company, get proof of concept, and then go out and get investors. I think we've sort of inverted that over the years. So we started under our own steam with ourselves, with Farmer John and the goats, and with our neighbors. We started wrapping soap around our dining room table with our neighbors, and we grew organically, day by day, being profitable from day one.
Wow. And what lessons stuck with you from, having to do this, basically from scratch, doing it all on your own, and then raising awareness about Beekman 1802 when you first launched it? I mean, you guys had never done something like this before.
Yeah, I think that it goes back to storytelling as well. Finding the audience to whom you're going to tell your story, making a personal connection to them, and then getting them to tell the story on your behalf. I mean, that's really how we scaled up, by telling the story and one neighbor telling another neighbor telling another neighbor. That's how we grew our business. And I think that, from the very beginning, yes, we were worried about customer acquisition, but we were more worried about customer retention. And I think that even to this day, as customer acquisition costs just continue to go up and up and up, customer retention is going to be much more important. So I encourage everybody to think about both of those. People try to get more focused on customer acquisition, but it's the retention that matters, that repeat customer that matters.
Yeah, we've been talking about that so much. I'm so glad you brought that up. That's something we hear all the time, and how those costs are going, especially with, the increase in online shopping. So how to retain that customer. And with storytelling, I actually, for those of you who don't know, I actually had the chance to go and interview Josh and Brent, actually in their office last year, right before COVID-19. And I'm not kidding you guys. I've retold your story probably, I can't even count on 2 hands how many times, to various founders and different people. I was like, they started in this, they started in an era of, unknown, or whatever we're calling it, uncertainty. So it's true. You guys have a story to tell, and I'm one of them who continues to tell it. It's one of my favorites.
Thank you.
So you understand the storytelling aspect, but then moving on to question number 5, how did you land your first big partnership? I mean, I'm curious. I wonder if storytelling plays a role in that. And then how did that kind of launch your success from there?
It does. Well, we, as Josh was saying, we launched our company in the last Great Recession in 2008. And we had this huge mortgage on the farm we were trying to cover. So I wouldn't say we were desperate, but we were eager to get something going, and had no pride. So once we started making our first product, I did cold calls to all of the luxury department stores in New York City, and to see if any one of them would carry our product. And the first one that bid was a store that sadly is no longer in business, called Henry Bendel, fantastic beauty store right there on 5th Avenue. And so they gave us a shot. And every day for 2 months, I stood on the floor of Henry Bendel, telling everyone who walked by the story of Beekman, why the goat milk was so important for the skin, what we were trying to accomplish. And it was successful at Bindle, but even more successful was the fact that one of the buyers from a little store called Anthropology happened to walk by and hear my story. Didn't tell me they were from Anthropology until after the fact. And they became our first big client, national client. And they were really the ones who helped us actually develop our first 3 or 4 SKUs. So again, it really does go back to putting yourself out there, telling your story, because you don't know who happens to be listening at what point in time. So that's how you break.
That's incredible. Okay, side note, do you guys watch Marvelous Mrs. Maisel?
Oh yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Wasn't Henry Bendel where she like goes to get all of her stuff, like get her makeup done? She was working at the makeup counter there, right?
Right, back in the day when it was.
Yeah.
Yes, beautiful.
I was like, I know that name. Amazing. That's amazing. So Anthropology, you land with Anthropology, and then after that, you actually go on to sell on television, becoming one of HSN and QVC's top beauty brands. How in the world did you manage to meet the demand around this new level of growth? Like, are you still wrapping soap around a kitchen table, or how is this going?
Well, we were scaling with partnerships at that point. But there's 2 main lessons we got when we sort of hit the big time of TV retail. One was start hiring people that know what you don't know. Like, I think there's one thing founders and entrepreneurs, a mistake they make is first they try to do everything themselves, and then they hire people that they know that already do the kind of things that they do. And we're like, we just need people who know inventory management, who are better at bookkeeping for this. So hire the people you don't have. Don't hire more of the people like yourself.
And founders often do that. It's hard for them to decide what is my strength and what do I not have skills at, and then hire the person that they need to fill in the gaps.
And then the second thing from TV retail managing was, when we went on, we were big from the very beginning. We
broke a record.
We broke records on day one. And then what happens then, of course, is that you're asked to come back more and more into increase your inventory and to sell.
Yeah.
And we said no. That's the second most valuable word in an entrepreneur's vocabulary is no. And it's because we wanted to grow at the pace that we would make sure we kept all of our customers, our neighbors, happy all the way along and not disappoint them in any way.
Yeah, that actually comes to my next question, which I was curious if there was never ever an opportunity in which you couldn't say yes, where you couldn't keep up with demand, and what did you learn from that?
Oh yeah, so this was actually fairly early on, right after we got the first big break with Anthropology. We had a call from the producer of the Oprah Winfrey Show. This was back when Oprah was still on TV, and she was doing Oprah's Favorite Things. And they said, oh, we want to put you on as part of Oprah's Favorite Things this year. But they said, you have to guarantee that you can produce X number of units of this product because it's crazy, it goes crazy. And I think the number was like 50,000, or it's a huge number. And like we tried to crunch the numbers in our production every which way we could, and we could not figure out how to make it. Because again, we were only 2 years old at the time.
Right.
And we had to say no to Oprah.
Wow.
Now, of course, at the time, Oprah being as big as that was, we thought that we would never recover from it. We would never have the opportunity again.
But that's the lesson. We said no at the right time, and then a few years later,
when she launched her first ever Oprah's Favorite Things Christmas list on Amazon, to us, and this was 8 years later, and we were ready for it.
Wow.
So that's just a lesson for all entrepreneurs. You think you might have a big break, and then the cards don't fall your way. If you believe in what you're doing, continue on. The big break will come again. It always does.
Right. I mean, they might have not, if you had, let's say, lied and said, sure, we can try to reach 50,000 or whatever, you might not have had that opportunity again 8 years later. So that's pretty incredible.
That's right.
That's awesome. Question number 8. You were running on QuickBooks prior to implementing NetSuite. What challenges did you face on QuickBooks as you continued to grow, and how has NetSuite helped in overcoming those challenges?
So we sell in a lot of different channels. So, there's TV retail, there's independent retail, there's, our e-commerce site. Like if there's a sales channel, we were selling in it. And it really became all about data, and managing data quickly.
And being able to pivot.
So that was what NetSuite did for us. It was like, we can look right down to the individual SKU levels of like units that we're selling and like practically live time. And it was customizable. So we could get the data we needed when we needed it. And if it wasn't immediately there, we could customize it so that we could have it. We could get it when needed. So it was really crunching data and getting it, live time.
And keeping it nimble.
So can you tell us a little bit about, you have all these channels, about your fulfillment then and your warehouse operations? How have you been able to customize NetSuite to meet those needs?
Well, we have two separate warehouses. We have one here in Sharon Springs, New York, and we have one in Florida. So that's, its own level of complication. The one in Florida is 120,000 square feet. So it's a big operation. And as Josh was saying, we manage inventory for our own website. We do some drop ship. We have independent retailers we work with, Ulta, QVC, HSN, even our own brick and mortar store. So there's lots of different layers of complexity there. And what's great about NetSuite is, in addition to the kind of the instantaneous data output, is it helps us manage the inventory, but also ties in with our financial system all in one place. So that we can see when inventory is coming in, how we're going to pay for that inventory, when money is going to be coming in to pay for that inventory.
And everybody working off the same platform as opposed to like fragmented
piecemeal systems, which is what we were using before, which is what most small companies do when they start out.
Sure.
This off the shelf thing, they get this off the shelf thing and try to put it together. And I tell you, the sleepless nights have greatly diminished. Yes,
well, that's good to hear, because as founders, I know those sleepless nights come often. As long as you're as long as NetSuite's eliminating some of those, we're good. We're doing our job.
You are.
I have one final question from me before I open it up to all of you who are tuning in. Again, make sure if you have any questions for Brent and Josh that you ask them in the comments, and we'll get to as many as we possibly can. Also, tell us where you're tuning in from. Give us a shout out. I'm going to take one quick break right now to say hello to a couple people that have been shouting out to us before I get to question number 10 here. We have Bruce from Toronto, Ellen, Athena, who says, hi, neighbors. Mario from Uruguay, hello from India. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Keep dropping your hellos. Keep telling us where you're tuning in from. And again, if you have any questions, we're going to get to those at the end of this conversation. Right after my question, number 10, Beekman 1802 has a cult following. I mean, there's no other way to put it. Products aside, what are you guys doing right that other founders can learn from? What makes the brand so lovable?
I think the secret weapon is empathy. Like everything that we do, consider, every decision we make is thought through the lens of our neighbors, which is what we call our customers, which is, somebody watching right now, hi neighbor, that's how we address all our customers. Wow. And it's that all we think about is how our neighbors are going to react to something. So it's from everything from product development, which makes sense, to even inventory management. Like, is somebody going to be disappointed if this is out of stock for so long? Like, everything to do is through the filter of our neighbors
and kindness.
And I think you can't go wrong if you do that. And that's what that builds that loyalty, is that kindness that we show to our neighbors, and they show it back to us.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. And I think, when we do things out of love, great things follow. So thank you for sharing that, and thank you for being founders that share that message. Okay, we do have questions coming in. If you guys are ready for some Q&A now.
Yeah.
First question is a good one. How did you know goat milk products would actually sell, or did you?
Well, there was lots of anecdotal evidence about goat milk being used for sensitive skin. But as a physician, I really wanted to figure out why there was so much anecdotal evidence about, people benefiting from the goat milk on their skin. And so I knew if we could unlock that scientific reasoning, that people would buy the product, because it was already a fairly well-developed marketplace for goat milk skincare products, but no one was really explaining or had figured out why they were working. And that's really what we spent the past decade doing, is really understanding the science of the components of goat milk, which make it so ideal for skincare.
Yeah, definitely. We have, really quickly, Jean is saying, inspirational story. Hello from New Zealand. Thank you, Jean, for tuning in. Okay, this is actually a good question from the audience. How did you guys handle a lot of orders, especially in the beginning when you were producing everything from home?
We worked 24/7.
We worked 24/7, and the other question is, we didn't, because the orders would come in. We didn't have the inventory. And what we did in those first days of the company is we remained in constant contact with the people waiting for their orders.
So we sold out of soap, like on a regular basis. We would sell soap. And what people don't know, when you make soap, it takes 3 months to cure a bar of soap. So that's 3 months while you're waiting for more units. So what we did was we would email and tell people, like, the process of soap, like, hey, you ordered your soap, it's coming. We would always offer a refund if you didn't want to wait. But as long as people knew what was happening, they got a picture of their soap and where they and who was going to pack it and all that, they were fine waiting. In fact, I think they actually enjoyed waiting the product more when they waited that.
And that actually created the foundation of the Beekman neighborhood. People waiting, with anticipation and telling other people, I'm waiting for my Beekman.
And we never once got somebody asking for a refund. Never once.
Wow. Again, storytelling too, by the way. I had no idea it took 3 months to make soap. No clue. Wouldn't have known that. This actually kind of stems nicely off of what you guys were just talking about, and building that team. After expanding beyond Sharon Springs, how have you continued to build the right community and team over the years? What do you look for when hiring new people?
Kindness.
For sure. And I think, our location in upstate New York, most beauty companies are not based in upstate New York. They're more in metropolitan areas. And I think when we have a job opening, the people who apply for the jobs, by and large, already know about Beekman, and they know about our philosophy of kindness. And they want to make that move to a company that is about kindness. So even though we are kind of in the quote unquote middle of nowhere in terms of where a beauty company is founded, we have members who've joined us from L'Oreal, LVMH, Under Armour, Lush. Like, we have amazing people who have brought their lives into upstate New York to be a part of this company. And it really all comes down to connecting around this idea of making the world a kinder and gentler place.
I love that. A good question too, that we were talking about a little bit earlier, which is selling on television. If you can name a few, what are the advantages and disadvantages of selling on television?
Well, the advantage, again, is storytelling. It's literally like door-to-door sales, except you're knocking on 1 million doors at once. And we get to tell our story, and it makes selling easy. The disadvantages is time. I mean, you have, it's the only retail channel that is limited by a time frame. Everything is measured in dollars per minute, and you get X amount of minutes to sell. Unlike if you're at a traditional retailer where your product is sitting on the shelves all the time, when it's open, you can make a sale. So the constraints of time, but the advantages are you really get to sell from your heart.
Did you ever get to bring the goats on TV with you guys?
Every time.
Like that is how we really broke out in the beginning.
That's amazing.
When we first went on TV, we realized the biggest challenge in that channel is people changing the channel. And so we stopped people from changing the channel. So we would hold baby goats for 18 hours a day while we were on TV.
Oh my gosh, that is amazing. How fun.
Yeah.
Okay, a couple more hellos coming in before we get to the last few questions. Hello again from India. Hello from Colombia. Thank you all for tuning in. Okay. I actually want to ask this question too. I'm a huge Schitt's Creek fan. I need to know all about the Rose Apothecary Schitt's Creek exclusive line. How did it happen?
Oh, yeah. Well, we are huge Schitt's Creek fans as well. And when we first approached them about 2 years ago, they had just announced that it was going to be their final season. And we said, you know what? We love your show. We just want to do something that celebrates the show, because the show is so much about kindness and about community and about being outsiders. And at the time, the show had not launched on Netflix yet. So it had not become this phenomenon. It was still like this really tiny show. So we started creating the products based on Rose Apothecary. It launched on Netflix, and then it just took on this life of its own. And it's just been so wonderful to meet so many new neighbors to Beekman who come to us through Schitt's Creek, but still have that same kind of customer profile of people who are genuinely interested in kindness and goodwill toward other people. It was just such an amazing collaboration, but that's how it came out. We were fans of the show. I picked up the phone and called the production company and said, "We love the show. We want to do this," and thankfully they said yes.
Well, and they had to have seen. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. When I watched, I was like, I wonder if they based this off of Beekman 1802. Has anybody ever asked? Because I genuinely was like,
everybody says that.
As soon as that storyline where David and when they opened the store, the apothecary, as soon as that storyline started, everyone was like, "Is this you guys?"
I seriously did. I wondered. That is amazing. What a cool story and a cool way to, just open it up to something new. That's amazing. Well, that is all the time we have for today. Unfortunately, I'm sad to say goodbye to you two because it's been so awesome talking to you. But thank you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing your story and all of your advice and the lessons learned along the way.
Oh, thanks, Kendall. So and hi, all the new neighbors we just met.
Yeah. Everybody around the world. So thank you both so much for joining us. And as always, thanks to all of you across the world who are tuning in right now. We so appreciate it. We wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for you. Thank you for giving us a platform to tell these entrepreneurial stories and commenting and saying hello. We so appreciate you. And if you want more, you can go ahead and give Netsuite a follow because there are interviews like this every single week. So we will see you then. Thank you. Bye.